Hello, my loves. Ruby here. If you are new to the channel, I am a professional psychic medium, tarot reader, astrologer, priestess, and spiritual guide. And today we are going to be starting a new series on the YouTube called Priestess Chronicles. And this is actually a series that I am moving from Patreon to here. You can think of it as like a video diary about my personal spiritual practice, at least the parts of it that I feel comfortable sharing online. So how my personal daily practice, my sadhana is changing, what energies I'm working with, what initiations I'm moving through, kind of maybe reflections on how the astrology or how different energies I'm working with are shaping my life and my practice. The reason why I started this series is because this is the type of content I really want from other practitioners. Like, I want to know what's really taking place in the practice. And I feel like we don't have enough spaces to really share about maybe our experiences of gnosis and mysticism with like-minded practitioners who are going to get it, right? The path of the mystic, the reader, the oracle, the priestess, the priest, it's often a very lonely path because so much of our journey happens in the interior planes. And for people that aren't maybe on the same journey as us, it's like these experiences can almost be like a foreign language. And it is a foreign language, right? As mystics, we live in the realm of archetype and symbol. And so maybe as you watch this series, some parts of your own practice will be validated, right? Or they'll be mirrored, and there'll be a sense of maybe just a little bit of validation on your path, or kind of a green light that you're moving in the right direction. And the only reason why I'm moving this from the Patreon is because we have a ton of ongoing series right now on the Patreon. We're moving through the major arcana of the tarot. I've got a series on Magdalene witchcraft. I have a series on Magdalene Tantra. And so this type of more like lived in reflections on my own personal path, I just feel like YouTube could be a good space for it. I wasn't ready to fully let it go, but it felt like there was already so much material that the Patreon was holding that maybe this could be in a different container. So we're currently in the throes of a Mercury retrograde, and because we are in this energy of reflection, right? With Mercury retrograde, we're usually called in to revisit, reflect, recall, retrieve. I've been spending some time really integrating and doing some reflection on what my path has been as a priestess and a practitioner and someone in full-time spiritual work, really from the beginning of this year and like from this summer, right? Now, this year has definitely been a very challenging one for me. I started this year off feeling really burnt out. I had been working really hard as a reader and a spiritual guide for pretty much the 2.5, 3 years prior, in a way that was almost superhuman, and there was grace available for that. But it seemed that just the cumulative effects of like reading at such an intense pace was catching up with me. Probably by the fall of 2025, I was feeling like I couldn't regenerate the way I usually can after a heavy reading week or a heavy reading day. And then by the beginning of January, I was really in a place of deep burnout. I had stepped away from reading in person at a shop. The reason why was to, again, lighten my reading load. And it seemed that that change didn't really hit the way that I wanted it to. So I shortened my reading hours. I raised my prices so that I could, still pay my bills. I stopped reading at a shop. I was a lot more intentional with the energy that I was putting into my business and my path of spiritual service, because I say business, but it's really a path of spiritual service. I really don't run this thing like a business, which I sometimes maybe would be helpful if I did that a little more, but whatever. If that initiation is meant for me, it will come at the right time. And this sense of just like chronic burnout really led to a disconnect in my personal practice, where it was like my channel was so fried that even coming to my personal practice felt like it was almost too taxing, and I needed to save my energy for my professional work and the work I gave to others. So I was really hanging on for dear life, doing my best to preserve my energy for my work, and also feeling a sense of, is it time to let this work go? Like, if I can't get this figured out, right? If I can't find a way to start feeling really inspired and light in my work again, then maybe this is just the end of the road for me. And this has always been, like, this endeavor, this path of spiritual service has always been something that has had so much grace around it, because it's all been spirit-led. And the only reason I'm here talking to you is because Spirit made it happen. The goddess made it happen. So I was like, if she's stepped away from this, then okay, maybe it's the end. Like, that's fine. Like, I don't have a lot of ego tied with this. So I can be okay with that if I'm meant to kind of shift into a new form. Because as a Pluto first house person, as a Sun Pluto person, a Pluto Mars person, a Pluto trine and sextile the nodes person, right? I understand that part of my life is regeneration and taking a new form. So all of this had really escalated by the summer of this past year, the summer of 2025. And it's not to say like my work was all horrible or my personal practice was all horrible. Like, that's not what I mean to imply. But there was just a sense of like burnout and a sense of the purpose and the alignment and the fire wasn't felt, even though I was still very dedicated. And by the summer, this had really cascaded into having a lot of issues with my physical health. And I had to cancel like 2 full weeks of readings at one point. I was just feeling so bad about that, so guilty about that. Like, having to go to the doctor was a really draining experience for me. It was kind of reflecting and like hearkening back to a time in which I was in really, really bad health, and the fear of kind of being back there. There's just like a lot of fear. It was like really in my world. And really the fear kind of coming in and making itself very known. And so not only was I feeling like spiritually sick, but I was physically sick. And in turn, my mental health was suffering, right? Like all of that fear really showing up as anxiety, and it was just a death portal. Like this is just like death portal shit. And if you have heavy Pluto in your chart, then this is a bit of the experience sometimes. And especially with me, like my sun and Pluto are in an opposition. And so sometimes the death and rebirth is like very, very literal. And then really the end of summer, I began a Kali sadhana. And what's interesting is everything that I'm describing to you that I went through, like kind of the lack of faith and the kind of issues with my health and just kind of a lot of my behavior at the time and how I was feeling, it was almost identical. Like the felt sense, like the circumstances were different, but the felt sense was almost identical to 7 years ago when I was leaving a marriage and my kind of life blew up for more freedom and more alignment and more authenticity. And 7 years is a Saturn cycle. It's a karmic cycle. So here I am 7 years later in the same place that I was 7 years before, being like, how am I here again? And this is how past life stuff works. This is how karmic stuff works. It is cyclical. Sometimes we just want to be done with a feeling forever, done with a pattern forever, done with the karma forever. And then it comes back. And it comes back because there's a deeper layer to shed. There's a deeper layer to clear. This type of work I'm talking about is also soul retrieval, power retrieval stuff. If we retrieved all of our soul, all of our power all at once, like that might be very shocking to the system. So this is a process that is meant to be cyclical, that is meant to be cumulative, right? So that past 7-year instance of just complete death, just a complete feeling of lifelessness, and the Tower card moments that followed and the radical freedom, or the move towards freedom and the move towards authenticity that followed, was a result of me doing a lot of Kali sadhana kind of the year before, right? So 7 years ago, there was a shift in my life towards alignment that was like brought in and lubricated by this radical, intense, almost like madness-inducing Kali medicine. And the thing is that Kali medicine does make me a little crazy in the sense that I become absolutely allergic to everything and everyone in my life that is not in alignment with me. So 7 years ago, I became like allergic to my marriage that I was in because I was bringing in that Kali energy, not even super consciously. Like I just started chanting into Kali, brought a Kali Murti into my home. Like it was her pulling me, not the other way around. And now I'm suddenly allergic to everything and everyone that is not in alignment with me. And like I'm purging and puking all of this trauma out. That was like 7 years ago. All right. So 7 years later, this summer, feeling like, oh my God, I like don't even know if I can keep working because I'm physically so sick. And who comes in? Kali Ma. And when she came in, I was kind of like, oh, this might be intense. But I didn't really know how it would be intense. And in the beginning, it really wasn't. Right? Like her divine timing. Like Kali is also associated with time. Oftentimes when we are initiated into Kali devotion and Kali medicine, there's this sense of her timing will always prevail. And sometimes it's a lot faster and more destructive than we want it to be. And sometimes it's a lot more gentle and slow and steady than we want it to be. It really depends on what the higher wisdom is calling for. And what is going to serve as the most growth. And what is going to sever the most bullshit. Bullshit externally, and then the internal bullshit we carry, right? Because like that's one of the things that Kali does. Kali is a bullshit like annihilator. If there's any truths that we're hanging on to that are not serving us, she will come in and sever those. And she does not give an F how uncomfortable it might be. And so the more the Kali sadhana unfolded, the more life was breathed back into me. Kali is just power. And suddenly I was like, oh, I have power again. There was a power loss that took place. And steadily my practice started feeling enlivening and inspiring again. I could do things after readings. Like in the spring, I would do a reading day and then I just had to crawl into bed because I was so tapped. It was like I was reading maybe at like 10% battery. And while the readings didn't suffer, because if the readings were suffering, I have enough integrity that I would have shut it down. While the readings were not suffering as an effect of me feeling more drained, everything else in my life was. And I feel so much dedication and dharma towards this work that even if it's like almost hurting me more than it's helping others, I just have a really hard time stopping. And I was considering it. And then Kali came in and Kali was like, do not stop. That is not what is meant here. It was almost like this was like an archonic force. Like, not to kind of bring in a type of dualism, but maybe an archonic force is even our ancestral baggage or like patriarchal baggage, right? It was like there was this archonic force that was trying to pull me from my dharma and was doing a really good job at it. And then Kali Ma came in and said, absolutely not, have some power. And she just started to give me more and more power. And then what happens after that, I can't tell you. Because it is all secret. And as an aside, I will be sharing the decks that I have been working with at the end of this video. And so if all of this is a lot and that's something, like that's maybe the only thing you would care about, just maybe fast forward a little bit, okay? But one of the initiations that I've been moving through is the initiation of secrecy. And I'm currently working on a course around Magdalene, priestess training, Magdalene spirituality that I'm hoping will be out the beginning of 2026. And the first module in this course is going to be on secrecy, right? Think about the High Priestess in tarot. She guards the mysteries. People always want me to give them every little detail, an A to Z guide on how to be a professional priestess. My guides have always said absolutely not. No. Because even if someone was to follow that A to Z guide, they're not necessarily initiated. They're not necessarily anointed. Because this is a path that how do I say this? My initiations, I don't plan. They show up when they're meant to show up. And sometimes they show up with an external teacher or like a ritual partner who provides the initiation, who provides the ritual. And then sometimes the goddess herself takes hold of my life, and every single waking moment of my life is the ritual. And here's the thing about where I'm at now in spirituality. If I was to start talking about it openly, and you were to start following in my footsteps, there's a good chance you would be in spiritual psychosis. There's a reason why I'm now just having these initiations 8 years, 9 years, 10 years after the beginning of certain things were started in my life. Because where I'm at now in my journey, I am so connected to certain energies. My life has become so archetypal and so full of symbolism and so full of like alignment, in the sense that whatever is happening for me on the higher spiritual plane is happening for me on every level. If you don't do the preliminary work to be ready for this, it will actually make you crazy. It will make you actually like crazy in a sense of potentially being on the street. You know, and not because there's anything wrong with that. Like maybe that's like I do think that is an initiation for some people, right? Is like going too much too fast, and then like the process of just fracturing and splintering because you've taken your psyche to a place that it is not ready for. So there's no judgment on that, but it's not the desirable path, right? You don't want to be in a place with your spirituality where you're unable to live your daily life, or you're unable to have regular relationships, where you're, you know, like I don't need to spell this out any more than I already am, right? One of the reasons why the work of the priestess is one that requires so much initiation and so much secrecy is because we are the bridge between divinity and humanity. We are the bridge between heaven and earth, and hell and earth, right? Like, to hold this and be in this is something that you don't even want unless there's no other choice, first of all. And secondly, like there's initiations that need to happen in the body. There's initiations that need to happen in the psyche. There's initiations that need to happen on the higher spiritual plane. So you can hold all of this and just also be in your regular human life. Because our humanity is a part of our spiritual journey, and we're never meant to leave it behind or negate it. And these like transcendental traditions that are all about just leaving the body behind to merge with spirit, that's actually a less whole form of spirituality than the spirituality that maybe takes this and then brings it into the body and accepts humanity and accepts even the darker parts of humanity. It's really easy just to dissociate out into the void if you have enough time to meditate for 8 to 12 hours a day. Like if you want to completely opt out of the human experience and you just like want to go be a monk and meditate in a cave for 12 hours a day, that is a less difficult journey than taking all of that and planting it into the body. That might trigger some people. Not any of my regular followers though, because you're all on the divine feminine path. That might trigger Buddhists, Vaishnavas. Okay, so a lot of my current spiritual initiations are initiations like what's actually transpired for me, the how, the what, the other people involved. It's all secretive. But an after effect of it has been, like I said, power retrieval and a deepening of the embodiment of the energies that I work with, and some really big breakthroughs when it comes to deity yoga. So yoga means union. Deity, union with the deity, union with the archetype, union with the Godhead. My experiences with that recently are some of the most powerful that I've ever had. And my life has been really wrecked by Kali sword. Like there's been a lot of upheaval. There's been a lot of changes. My tendencies and reactions around certain things have been shifting. For example, my son has been really taking an interest with my work, and I've never, ever, ever put any type of spirituality onto him because I was raised in an evangelical cult. I had no choice about the religion that I was born and indoctrinated into. And so while my whole life is pretty much spirituality, I've always had a separation from this and, my role as a mom. And, now that he's 8, over the course of his life, we've had conversations about every spiritual tradition. And there's a lot of religious and spiritual iconography in my house. So he asked questions when he was younger. He really felt a connection to Isis and Mary. He asked if he could have them in his room. I said yes. So it's there's been certain times in which he's been curious and asked questions, and I've always answered, but also in a way that's very diplomatic and inclusive. And recently, he's been more interested. He asked me to look at his natal chart. I did. He's been doing more ritual work with me. He got an athame because he asked for one. He really wanted to learn how to do some stuff on it. So I taught him the LBRP, and now he's been crafting all of these rituals, and like he's like a ceremonial magician savant. Like, and I'm pretty hands off about it. Like, again. And anyways, my ex-husband reached out to me to tell me that I was violating our parenting agreement around religion, because I've been talking to Wyatt about astrology. And my response to it was to really channel Kali. I was like, well, then the parenting agreement needs to change. And like in an interaction like that with my ex-husband, where I'm like saying absolutely not, and I am being very passionate and not holding my ground, an experience like that would have caused me to have a full-on panic attack afterwards. I would have felt so much fear, so much guilt. There would have been so much self-blame. Why couldn't I handle that better? And instead, I felt totally at peace. Totally at peace. There was this like dark feminine, like confidence and energy. And I feel the protection and the power of the dark feminine on my side as I'm moving through these initiations. In a way where I'm like almost scared for the people who are gonna come in and project on me and demean me, because there's a wall of protection around me that is there that I have not felt before. And the reason why I say people coming in to project and demean me is because I'm in this initiation with Dark Mother, initiation with the Dark Feminine. Really, for the first time in my entire career, I have felt a sense of being shamed for how I present and my appearance, and for not being more religious, and for working within a feminine stream, right? Like, I've maybe felt that from like religious Christian people that come find my content, or people that are really plugged into maybe like a very like more like fascist conspiracy theory, like New Age pipeline, but like never from Kali worshipers. And so while I've been entering into these spaces to worship Kali and to connect in with Kali and to serve Kali, there's also been all of these experiences of people projecting on me, misunderstanding me, throwing a lot of jealousy on me, right? Demeaning me. And it's not personal. It is reflective of people's discomfort and feelings around the dark feminine, around Kali Ma, even in spaces that are full of people saying they worship her, saying they're devoted to her. Both Kali and Mary Magdalene are symbolized by having long flowing hair. In both of the traditions in which they originate, in the cultures of which they originate, this overtly implies that they were sex workers. In a time where that was like one of the most transgressive things you could be as a woman. These energies, these dark feminine energies, celebrate and represent the aspects of femininity that society wants to blame, shame, reject, and project on. Now, I don't want to get too caught up in equating feminine energy to gender, because it's so much more than that. And these teachings have not been taught in a way that are inclusive to people that live outside of a more heteronormative, patriarchal gender binary. And they can include the full spectrum of human experience. Okay. But when it comes to the archetypes, these things show up on every level. They get really literal. So while dark feminine energy isn't confined to the experience of being like a cis woman, the dark feminine often comes in a package of a feminine being who is connected in with her beauty, connected in with her power, connected in with her sexuality, connected in with her freedom, liberated, intuitive. Because these are her aspects that have been repressed by patriarchal society. And she really requires freedom from us, and she really requires that we start listening to our body. Okay, so a few more things about my practice. This is getting long. Okay. Since getting back from a spiritual retreat I attended at the beginning of November, I have started to connect in with Lilith in a way I have never connected with Lilith before. And she really came in this last new moon in Scorpio. And I had an experience of channeling her on the Patreon community that was just so incredible. And she's stayed with me ever since. When she came in, Babylon also came in, which is an energy I haven't worked with in maybe 5 years. I had a really powerful experience with Babylon like 5 years ago and kind of let it go. And one of the reasons I kind of let it go is, you know, my experience amongst like male ceremonial magicians, like Thelemites, Golden Dawn people, was that energy was one that was almost like an objectification of the divine feminine. And some of the way in which Babylon is written about by male practitioners, I find to be like very objectifying and quite stupid. Like, no offense. So I kind of let that go. And it's like Lilith and Babylon are coming in to help me reclaim the things in me that are authentic to me, then maybe I let go because of what some male ceremonial magician projected onto me that I just like didn't want to be a part of anymore. And so my own parts of myself that I've dimmed a little bit because I'm like, they're not palatable. People aren't going to like them. If I really get on camera and channel the way I can really channel, people aren't going to like it. If I really kind of show up in my embodiment, in my power, and the way that feels authentic to me, people aren't going to like it. If I really wear the eyelashes and the lipstick that I want to wear, people aren't going to like it. So maybe I'll do it, but I'll just be aware, right? The dark feminine is like annihilating all of that. And also the places where I've been living in misalignment because I felt like I should. Like, I don't really like the place that I live, but I'm just going to stay here forever because this is where my ex-husband wants me to live and I'm trapped. Or I'm staying in this one situation like out of fear because like, what if there isn't anything better out there? But actually it's in misalignment. And I'm at the point where I am more afraid of misalignment than I am in letting anything go. And I'm listening in a way I haven't listened before. I think there is a part of me that felt like maybe I couldn't retrieve the same wisdom for myself that I do for everyone I work with, right? Because I've had such powerful experiences channeling and reading for other people in a way where I never doubt what comes in the channel for somebody else. But I don't really ask and listen as much as I could in my personal daily life. And I think it comes down to this really old idea from religion that, like, God doesn't like me, right? Like, God's not gonna catch me if I fall. And so I need to figure it all out myself. And if there is some patriarchal God out there, he probably doesn't like me. But the goddess that lives in the cremation grounds and chops men's heads off and gnaws at their bones, oh, she loves me. The goddess who was an equal to the male Christ, who every man around her projected on and mistreated because they were jealous that they didn't have that feminine power. She loves me, and she's going to take care of me, and she will give me the right messages at the right time when I need them. And like, whoa, it's one thing to intellectually assent to something. It's another thing to program the belief into your body. And like programming the belief into my body that the goddess has me, she's got me, has been life-changing. Life-changing. Okay, I could keep going. We're gonna stop it there. I'll give you a few more like practical brass tacks about my practice, and then we can do another episode soon. You can let me know in the comments what you would like me to talk about when it comes to this type of personal reflection. I've been spending probably more time in sadhana and spiritual practice than I have like the entire year within the last month or so. Probably I'm dedicating like a good 3 hours a day to spiritual practice. Don't do that because I'm doing that. Okay. Just commit to some form of spiritual practice. Most people I work with can't even show up for 15 minutes a day. So please don't try to show up for 3 hours a day. Like I get woken up between like 5 and 6:30 to do this stuff. And then I'll do some more practice at night. So it's also not like 3 hours all at once. I run my own business. I have a son. Like, I can't do 3 hours all at once. Just do something every day, please, though. Or at least 5 days a week. Or at least enough where you're actually going to reap the benefits. You're going to start building a foundation. So that's been a huge part of my practice. The channeling work with the goddess has come in a way where that was just a part of my work that I felt a little embarrassed by. I'm going to be so honest with you. Because a lot of people think it's bullshit. And when people get a reading from me, they can be the biggest skeptics in the world and they'll leave feeling like something happened, right? And so I have no shame or like no insecurity, self-consciousness reading for another person because I know that what I'm going to tune into is going to be verifiable by them, is going to be something they relate to, even if they're coming in skeptical. But channeling the goddess, it's something that has come into my professional work because I can't always control it. I don't control the dark feminine. So sometimes she's kind of come in. And even the beginning of my Patreon was a lot more of that, channeling the goddess. But it was for a very small group of people that I knew were on board. And part of me wanted to protect that part of my work, because if it did get a lot of criticism, then I might try to change it in some way. And when it comes to the work of channeling the goddess, it's like not really, I think, appropriate for me to like make it more palatable. I feel like everyone's trying to make her more palatable, especially men in spirituality and religious life. Like, I overheard a conversation the other day between a couple of male practitioners, and it was like the male practitioners were really trying to put Kali in a box. And I like, at some point, tried to speak up, and I got like shushed out of the conversation. And I could hear the goddess being like, see, they don't like me. Anyone who worships me wouldn't do that. Like, I'm going to say something that might seem a little egotistical. Some of these men, I was their spiritual superior in every way. Every way. And I can say that because I heard him talk for 5 minutes. And they looked down on me as not being, how could I possibly have any wisdom? And the only reason I even mention this is because these are Kali worshipers. These are Kali devotees. And so witnessing recently men trying to make the divine feminine more palatable and work for them, and disrespecting a woman in the process, has really instilled in me this idea of like, she's going to come in how she's going to come in, and I'm not going to edit her. And so I've been making a lot of space for that in my life, listening to her, venerating her, letting her be whatever she wants to be. Like, I don't need to put her in a box. I want her to be whatever she needs to be. And I don't want to extract the parts of her that I think make her less palatable or less acceptable for a mainstream audience. Like, I'm working on this website, and I really liked the vision board for the kind of the original designs that I was doing with my content, the person that's helping me with this, right? And then I looked at the website a few weeks ago, and a lot of the imagery was changed. And the person who's doing it for me, really sweet, like, they're amazing. They're awesome. They're like, yeah, you know, I'm making this really neutral so it doesn't trigger religious people. And I sat with that because I was like, okay, that's a good thing. And as I've sat with that, I'm like, I think I'm trying to make myself too palatable. Like, let's get the goddess back up on the website. So, enough of that. I'm going to show you the decks I'm working with right now. I'll go through them pretty quick because we've already spent a long time here together. And a lot of these decks I've probably mentioned before. I think one of the reasons why I'm feeling called to kind of move away from this just being like a deck review channel is because I'm not really bringing that many new decks into my collection these days. And like pretty much every new deck I brought into my collection is going to be on my favorites of the year, because it's like when I'm bringing a deck into my collection at this point, it's because it is like going to be something that's really essential to my path. And most decks right now are not totally essential to my path. I've also been collecting for enough time now that I'm pretty satisfied with what I have, okay? But first deck that I've been working with, this is the card I drew today, or the two cards I drew today. The Hieros Gamos, that's a lover's card, and the Two of Chalices. This is the Two of Cups in traditional tarot. I believe this is called the Mysteries of the Red Madonna. Let me look. Yes. Mysteries of the Red Madonna, Mary Magdalene Tarot Deck by Hetty and Grobler. I got this deck when it first came out, maybe in the spring, and as beautiful as it was, I just wasn't working with her very much because it wasn't time yet. Within the last 2 months, it's been really time for this deck. It's been really helping me understand a lot of the archetypal marks I'm hitting right now. And this has been a pull a card almost every day for me. And when I am pulling a card from this deck, I am consulting the guidebook, which is excellent. I think I need to just read this guidebook all the way through just for enrichment. It's full of so much wisdom. This is not like a tarot deck I would use with clients. It is not a tarot deck I think I would even use as I traditionally use a tarot deck. I use it more like an oracle. I don't really draw more than a few cards at a time. And it's much more about the archetypes that are coming through and how these higher energies are playing out in my day-to-day life than this deck is about like any type of like human level interaction or prediction. Okay. Next deck on the list is, I believe this is called the Void Tarot. Yes, the Void Tarot. I picked this up at a metaphysical store in Denver, I believe at the beginning of this year. And I really liked it, and I felt like it was really accurate, but also sometimes it's not quite time yet. And then when Lilith really came in for me, she came in with this deck. And she was like, this is my deck. This is how we're going to talk to each other. And so I've been using this deck, probably the most I've ever used it, to connect in with Lilith. Okay. Tarot of Persephone's Garden, Chthonian edition by Forest Moon Maiden. I can't remember the name of her Etsy store. I think it's Chthonic Forest. This deck was gifted to me by the deck creator because I have talked so much about her other decks on this channel. I'm really glad that it was, because this is probably my favorite deck from this deck creator. I don't know if it's still up for purchase, but I have been using this deck a lot to connect in with Mary Magdalene and with the Dark Feminine. And this has been the deck that's been traveling with me. So the last 2 trips I took, this was the tarot deck that I used. This was the tarot deck I used to channel Kali at a retreat I was doing in San Francisco a few weeks ago. And it's become a really powerful tool. One of the decks I used to connect in with Mary Magdalene, but I feel like there's a lot of faces of the Dark Feminine coming through with her. And then last deck on the list, the Marielle Tarot. One of my all-time favorite decks, but I haven't picked her up and worked with her in a while. So she's coming through and really giving me some of the messages, I feel like. Okay, and then in terms of Oracle, I've been kind of using that Mysteries of the Red Madonna tarot like an oracle, and then also the Kali Oracle by Alana Fairchild. I've been doing a lot of daily draws with this. I really, really, really love this deck. I purchased this deck when it first came out, which was maybe like 4 or 5 years ago now, and it might be my most consulted Alana Fairchild deck. And then also the Isis Pocket Oracle I've been using a lot. Isis really came in for me recently too, which is interesting, because I've been really working within like the Christian pantheon. And when I say Christian pantheon, we're talking like the divine feminine, Magdalene, tantric Christian pantheon. And then working with Kali Ma. And some other energies that kind of are connected in with Mother Kali. And so Isis coming in was interesting. I mean, I have a big Isis tattoo on my leg. Like you can see there's a connection here. And I think one of the reasons why she's come in is because my son has been doing more magic in the house and she's very connected to my son. So we have a lot of goddesses up in here right now. And if you were to come into my house, you could feel it. Oh, and the last oracle. Sorry, there's one more oracle I want to share with you. This one I just pulled out. Like, I think I pulled her out like 2 days ago. This is the Queen Mab Oracle by Tess Whitehurst. This is a little out of my decks I usually go for. I've talked about this deck on the channel before, and I haven't really used this deck since I moved into this house, which was like a year ago. And as always, as I've always felt with this deck, the pulls from it have been scary. Like so accurate, it's scary. And also this deck came out because I'm working with Lilith. Like this is a Lilith deck to the core. Like this is definitely a Lilith deck. So those are the decks I've been utilizing the most. I would say honorable mentions to the Mystique of Magdalene Oracle and the Mary Magdalene Oracle by Megan Watterson. And this is all personal stuff, so my professional decks are not included in this. This is just what I've been using personally on my path. And that's it. That's all. That's all for today. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it wasn't too long. And let me know what you're curious about when it comes to personal practice. I'll share what I can. And I love you. I'll see you soon.